Good morning. I will now call the September 14th San Diego County Board of Supervisors regular meeting to order. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Supervisor Anderson. Supervisor Lawson-Remer. Supervisor Desmond.
Here.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas here.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher here. First item on the agenda is order closed session reports. Actions taken yesterday. I will ask County Council to report those actions.
Good morning. The Board of Supervisors met in closed session on September 13th, 2022 from 1:47 p.m. to 2:57 p.m. The Board took the following reportable actions. On item 13E, KGP versus County of San Diego, a vote of 5-0, the Board authorized County Council not to proceed with the current appeal. End of report.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is non-agendized public communication. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board on matters that are within our jurisdiction but are not on today's agenda. The only action the board may take is a referral to the Chief Administrative Officer. Reminder, according to Rule 4A, members of the public who are non-English speaking and need interpretation assistance will be allotted additional time to facilitate translation. Also, according to our rules of procedure, we will hear from up to 5 in-person speakers, 5 virtual speakers. Any remaining requests to speak will be conducted at the conclusion of our agendized business for today. At this point, I'll ask the clerk to call forward up to 5 in-person and 5 virtual speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 11 total requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda, 3 in person and 8 by phone. For those that have requested to speak via phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers. As your name is called, if you could please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. You will then have 2 minutes to address the board, and I'd like to invite forward the following individuals: Michael Brando, Robert German, and Audra. And if you could please state your name before beginning your comments for the audio record.
Michael, the logical end point of this vicious circle is mass psychological formation. That is giant group hypnosis and totalitarianism. That is the radical destruction of all human creativity, individuality, diversity, and every form of social connectedness, except the connection of the individual with the weaponized state. We can see in all facets of society how this process is now evolving toward its limit and its own self-implosion. For the first time in history, the entire Earth village has been caught up in the same process of giant group hypnosis. The artificial and digital mechanization of the world has been scaled up to such an extent that the attempted omnipresent control reaches into the core of intimacy and private life. We are experiencing the endpoint of a cycle, the moment at which a ruling fake science ideology is driven to its ultimate consequence, rears up its full power one last time, and thereby ultimately shows its powerlessness in a definitive and final way. Those are beautiful words from Matthias Desmond, The Psychology of Totalitarianism. This board, including Jim Desmond, who people hold out to be some kind of holy saint, and all of its ancillary agencies are involved in evil, and San Diego County is awakening.
Have a slideshow. Good morning. Robert Gurman, I have submitted 5 exhibits and a slideshow to refresh your memory of the San Diego unsustainable, inept city airport system. Lindbergh, whose runway is located on the Rose Canyon earthquake fault, which would liquefy in a 6.9 earthquake, resulting in critical infrastructure damage affecting the airport, harbor, and surrounding communities. Sea level rise, not including the daily tide changes, show how the sea would affect the airport and the 12,000 projected employees going to and from the airport. Next, the two double-breasting, non-union airports that skim work from Lindbergh, Montgomery, and Gillespie. These two rat airports are 10 miles apart, with Montgomery 3 miles from Miramar. MCAS is last, and that is the solution. 23,000 acres of high, flat land with a 12,000 underused foot runway with only 30 operations a day. Combine all three airports, locate them at Miramar, spend infrastructure money on a transportation system that would have a future and service all of San Diego County. No politics, just good business sense. You can move MCAS to Lindbergh, and the Navy and the Marines would love another access to the sea. Thank you.
Use the name Audra. So, it's just interesting that you guys, don't like that we come up here and let you know what we think about what you're doing, but you're supposed to have the consent of the governed. And Nathan, you claimed that you were speaking for all of San Diego yesterday. And that's impossible when there's people here that you can't speak for. And we come because we actually care about what happens in this community. And we want the best for people, and you act like what we want is not the best, that it's, something different than you. But I find that if you're not even going to accept any kind of information from the people that are here to make things better, instead you talk about us in a way of like, I'm so sorry these people had to come here and say this. But that's why you're here. Like, that's what we're supposed to do as citizens or whatnot. And, it makes me think, like, if I was in a car accident and you came and saw it, would you help? Probably not. And that's the sad thing, because if I saw any one of you guys in a car accident, I would actually try and save your life and do everything that I could to do that. But what you guys are doing is engaging in things that are totally evil. I mean, you can't be working with global entities. That's treason, Nathan. No matter how you look at it. And it's not fair to the people to say that you're actually trying to do right by them, but you have a chance for redemption. And you have to know that no matter what you guys do that isn't right and in the line of God, that he always uses evil for good. So I have no doubt in my mind that everything that you're doing is going to be used for good. But I just hope that one day you turn away from it and repent so that you don't have to face our Maker and he turns away from you and says, I never knew you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I would like to again remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We will begin with our first caller. And again, if you could please state your name before beginning your comments.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and Supervisors. My name is Becky Rapp. I'm a parent and a public health educator. And I come here this morning to share with you an article released the other day titled Prenatal Cannabis Exposure Associated with Mental Disorders in Children. The article describes cannabis exposure following the middle of the first trimester, generally after 5 to 6 weeks of fetal development, is associated with attention, social, and behavioral problems that persist as the affected child progresses into early adolescence. I appreciate information describing the negative impacts marijuana has on the developing fetus, as I am raising a child who was exposed to marijuana in utero. My family is living this reality. His social and behavioral issues have caused his educational progression to be stunted and required many professionals to intervene in his life. He has severe anxiety that can be crippling at times, as well as behavioral issues that disrupt his ability to learn. His inability to control his emotions and self-regulate has impacted his quality of life, limiting opportunities. This is the reality of using marijuana while pregnant, and women need to be educated about the harms. A study out of Colorado where 400 randomly selected dispensaries were selected, 7 in 10 recommended cannabis products as a treatment for morning sickness. Nearly 2/3 of the employees who answered calls based their recommendations on personal opinion. And more than 1/3 said cannabis was safe during pregnancy. I would appreciate a study similar conducted in our county. It's a great opportunity to partner with cities and gather local data. Every woman should be made aware of the negative consequences, and every dispensary sales associate should be educated on the significant harms. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Hi, good morning, Board of Supervisors. This is KB Strange. I'm a pharmacist, and I'd like to share some information with you this morning on a well-respected newsletter called tablet.com. It's entitled How Weed Became the New OxyContin. The reporter began by quoting Dr. Libby Stunt, an addiction psychiatrist who treats patients with severe drug dependency, which usually means heroin, methamphetamines, and opioids. Beginning 5 years ago, she began to see something new. I quote, "I started seeing people with the worst psychosis symptoms that I have ever seen and the worst delusions that I have ever seen," end quote. These cases were even more acute than she'd seen from psychotic patients on meth. Some of the delusions were accompanied by severe violence. These patients were coming up positive only for cannabis, which is a romanticized term for marijuana. Cannabis products that are sold at marijuana storefronts contain no actual plant matter. They're made by putting pulverized marijuana into a tube and running either butane, propane, ethanol, or carbon dioxide through it, which separates THC from the rest of the plant. The end product is a wax that can be anywhere from 70 to 80% THC. That wax can then be put in a vacuum oven and further concentrated into oils that are as much as 95 to 99% THC. When the oil is used, they're called dabs, and they are extraordinarily dangerous to good public health. Thank you for this opportunity to share this with your listening audience. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Barbara Gordon. Good morning. I said, as a public health advocate, I continue to be concerned about the increase of tobacco and marijuana use with our young adults. According to Monitoring the Future, past daily marijuana use reached the highest level ever recorded since these trends were first monitored in 1988. The proportion of young adults who reported past year marijuana use reached 43% in 2021. This is a significant increase from 34% just 5 years ago. Nora Volkauer, director of NIDA, said this is an increasingly concerning trend, and many people viewing vaping and marijuana use as safer. But the reality is that nicotine and marijuana are highly addictive, particularly in younger adults. It's concerning with this focus of this Board of Supervisors to increase access to marijuana. But what you really should be your priority, you should be developing and implementing a more effective policy to curtail the surge of these products. This should be a land use issue to reduce the prevalence of all smoking, which could be accomplished by reducing the number of tobacco retailers, especially near use-sensitive areas, and cap the number of marijuana businesses to the current 5 you have. I urge the board to take the lead. Your action will increase community buy-in and public support, which is essential for reducing smoke prevalence of tobacco and marijuana use among our young adults. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller. Caller, you have been unmuted. If you'd like to begin your comments.
Consuelo. First off, I want to acknowledge all the ones who consistently show up to these meetings around the county, the ones who are paying close attention and are doing what they can for the movement, not for themselves, in spite of continuously being ignored by these public servants. The ones who go unnoticed because you don't have a huge following. The pure hearts who do what they do for the love of humanity, freedom, and truth. I want to acknowledge you. You are all so amazing. Truly. Okay. Now, it started as a virus and has mutated into an IQ test. The fluoride in our water and lithium in the air is truly working for them. Questioning and doubting the most historically corrupt and fraudulent companies and entities in the world does not make you anti-anything, nor does it make you a conspiracy theorist. Actually, questioning is and should be the place of reason. The fact that questioning has become so taboo should, in fact, send a chill up everyone's spine. You know why they don't spray kids with DDT anymore? Because someone questioned settled science. No vaccine for HIV after 40 years of research. No vaccine for the common cold. No vaccine for cancer after 100 years of research. Nothing. A virus mysteriously appears, and within a year, a vaccine is created, and we are all expected to take it. No thanks. Listen, evil people rule the world. Once you understand that, your future is clear. You will either destroy them or they will destroy you. Wake up, people.
Thank you. We will go to our final caller for the morning.
This is Truth. Thanks for that passion, Consuelo. Jen, you had some nerve at yesterday's meeting telling people that they shouldn't criticize Wilma Wooten. That was a low Nathan level you sunk to. Not only do people have every right to criticize anyone involved with government in operations, as this is the public business, but it was you and every supervisor who put Wilma in charge of the state of emergency response. So don't try to cover for her decision. If it was you, Jim, who was the dictator in charge of the county's emergencies, then everything would be directed to you as deserved. So no, we the people are never going to stop pointing out Wilma's lies because she won't stop lying. And if you're trying to cover for her, then you're just as guilty as her. Next topic. I wanted to add another friendly amendment to Oliver Twist's Framework for Our Freedom, Protocols for Increasing Transparency and Accountability proposal, as well as to the new Code of Conflict of Interest that I committed Augur to. I would call this edition the Framework for Equal Representation and Power. So it consists of limiting each supervisor's speaking time on the consent calendar to the same time limit that every public speaker is allowed, 2 minutes only for each supervisor. I would also include eliminating the ability of each supervisor to pull from the consent calendar. If the public can no longer pull from the consent, then no longer should any of these supervisors be allowed to pull anything. And it would be nice if only the public and no longer any of these supervisors could decide what items even make the consent calendar in the first place. Can you think of anything more equitable? We all deserve equal representation in order to get back and retain forever our power as we, the people.
Outbursts in the second row violate the rules of procedure. This is your first warning for disrupting the conduct of the meeting. Carry on.
Thank you. For the remaining callers that requested to speak on a matter not listed on the agenda, please hang up and call back at the conclusion of the session. Chair Fletcher, that concludes the request for non-agenda public communication this morning.
Next on our agenda is approval of the statement of proceedings minutes for the regular meeting of August 31st, 2022. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Vice Chair Vargas. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We'll now proceed with the formation of our consent calendar. Members of the public will have the opportunity to comment on the consent calendar after supervisors have had a chance to make any comments or pull any items. We'll begin with Supervisor Anderson.
I'd like to just make a quick comment on item 10. I'd like to recognize the efforts of our county staff for helping our office get these fee waivers on the agenda so quickly. I especially like to thank the Planning and Development Services Department, the Assessor, Recorder, County Clerk, and the Public Safety Group for their dedication, thoughtfulness, and willingness to innovate to help my constituents rebuild. This action will allow those who lost their homes, structures, or important documents to get back on their feet and rebuild their lives. So thank you so much for your hard work. What a difference over the years. Our staff has learned so much and has done such a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to comment on the item that regarding identifying funding opportunities to support transit-oriented development within Buena Creek. That's item 4. I just think it's a great step forward. So I just want to thank my colleague for your work in bringing this forward. You know, obviously, as we continue to try to address our affordable housing crisis, looking to build in transit-supported areas is a really, really important strategy. And if we can bring money home to do that work, then all the better. So thanks, and happy to support that.
Thank you. St. Desmond.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to comment on item 3. I don't have no items to pull, but and I would like to thank the Chair and Supervisor Anderson bringing forth item 10 and trying to get people to rebuilding their lives and waiving fees when they're suffering from these fires. On item 3, this is the reducing regulatory burdens against for permanently disabled individuals. This is something that brought to my attention that for individuals or people that have adult autistic or people with disabilities on their properties, they can have a trailer on their property where that person can, live alone and independently as best they can. But unfortunately, our process requires a annual permit or an annual update, which gets burdensome, particularly on people who have long-term disabilities. So a mother of an adult son with autism wrote my office and brought to our attention that for someone with a permanent disability is still on this, why are they still on this annual medical recertification? Puts a lot of stress and burden on the parents and the caretakers. And this annual medical certification makes sense for somebody with a curable temporary disability, but we don't want people, living in trailers if they don't really need to. But it's an undue stress and burden for the parents and the caretakers, and I'm simply asking staff to consider and prepare revisions to the zoning ordinance to extend a doctor's note requirements for a longer period of time for certain longer and permanent disabilities such as autism. So I appreciate your support on that. Item 4, this is identifying opportunities, and Supervisor Lawson-Remer brought it up, within the Buena Creek area. We've got a unique opportunity in this area to catalyze significant affordable housing. This is the only fixed rail transit stop in the entire unincorporated area of our county, and with NCTD's North County Transit District Sprinter that runs east and west along the 78. So, and it's also prime for transit-oriented development, and it's also VMT compliant. So the potential there has not been realized primarily because of infrastructure needs, roads, intersections, drainage, a multiple of causes that even high-density projects all its infrastructure is too expensive for them to come in and make it pencil out. So we have the opportunity to improve these deficient road segments and intersections to a point where the transient-oriented development and housing projects can make sense. So this action directs staff to explore funding opportunities, including partnering with NCTD on grants and exploring the EIFD similar to item 9 in this agenda. And basically at this point is exploring those opportunities. So I'd like to ask staff to consider opportunities within the ARPA framework of funds. Also, potentially, the board can hopefully set aside the last hearing for housing. That the board actually set aside last meeting when we put some of those ARPA dollars towards housing. Potentially, some of those might qualify for this area. But throughout San Diego County, we're actually asking cities and other entities to create housing and denser housing along transit and transit opportunities. And this is our opportunity for us to set an example here in the county And so I request, hopefully support, I would imagine, from my colleagues on this item as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice Chair Vargas.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. I also just want to acknowledge Supervisor Desmond and item number 3. I really appreciate that you brought this forward. This board letter, I think, is in line with our proposal I introduced earlier to identify areas and programs that create barriers for our ADA community and propose ways to further enhance access. So I appreciate that we're doing everything we can to reduce the burden for our ADA community. And I'm happy to support. And then on item number 10, I want to thank the Chair and Supervisor Anderson for the quick action to provide the assistance for the families and individuals who were impacted by the Border 32 fire. We need to do everything that we can to make sure that we support them and rebuild their efforts. And with that, I'm happy to make a motion to accept the consent calendar.
All right, thank you. I'm happy to second that. I don't have any items to pull. I want to echo the sentiments on item 3. I appreciate Supervisor Desmond bringing this forward. A good opportunity for the county to work better with our residents, those in need of additional assistance, and helping residents with medical conditions or disabilities or their loved ones assess the medical trailers is a good thing. Very supportive of that. On item 4, I agree that this area in Buena Creek is a prime location that ought to really be maximized for housing, and I think we should explore all opportunities. Appreciate Supervisor Desmond clarifying that EIFD is a wonderful financing mechanism when you have a specific project, when you have other jurisdictions that are partners. So just to have staff explore the viability of this, not officially launching the process, but looking at pros and cons and what it might look like, I think is an appropriate step forward. And on item 10, I appreciate partnering with Supervisor Joel Anderson on this. Wildfires are a tremendous threat to our community. The loss of a home or damage to a home from fire is a traumatic event, and helping people get back in their homes a little bit easier by waiving fees, by expediting things is an appropriate thing for us to do. We know in the Border 32 fire, we had a number of homes and structures that were destroyed completely and others that were damaged, and so us as a county doing everything we can to help ease the difficult condition those folks are going through is an appropriate thing, and I appreciate partnering with Supervisor Anderson on that. With that, we have a motion by Vice Chair Vargas, seconded by myself. Before we vote, let's hear from public speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 6 total requests to speak on items on the consent calendar, 3 individuals in person and 3 requesting to speak by phone. For any members of the public that have requested to speak on items on the consent calendar, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers. As your name is called, if you could please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I'd like to invite forward the following individuals: Audra, James Roberts, and Karina Contreras. You will have 2 minutes to address the board, and if you could please begin by stating your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Karina Contreras. I'm here in my capacity as council member for the City of Vista, District 1. Chair, Vice Chair, Supervisors, thank you for allowing the opportunity to speak. I want to speak on item 4. It's super exciting. I know that you heard from me not so long ago bringing up the Buena Creek Transit Station. And it really is a unique opportunity because it's the only transit station that you all have within the unincorporated county. So, I think it's great that we're going to get some more information. I also sit on North County Transit District, and I'm the chair of the new RECE committee, which is the Rail Safety and Community Enhancement. And I want to point out just a few things. The Buena Creek Station has the Inland Rail Trail right next to it, but that intersection is absolutely terrible. I mean, there is no safe way for those cyclists to cross. So keep that in mind when we're looking at, possibly redeveloping, reducing VMT is super important. There's an asset located 3 miles from the transit center, and that's the business park in the city of Vista. Currently, there's not a real good transit system that gets you from the Buena Creek Station to our business park. And that's a huge opportunity if we're going to build homes in this area to make sure that we can connect people to more economic opportunity. And also, it's actually faster to go on bike than it is on bus So if we could figure out a way to partner with the city of Vista to do some protected bike lanes as more people get e-bikes, I'm sure that the 19 minutes that it tells me on Google will be, 10 minutes or less. So thank you so much, and I appreciate this next step.
My name is James Roberts. I'm here to speak on item number 2 if it's pulled from the consent agenda.
It wasn't pulled, sir. If you want to speak on item 2, now is your time to speak.
Okay, I am the civil engineer for the Malabar Ranch project. It's track number 4908-2 in District 5. As noted in the staff comments, the project had a change of ownership, and we've also changed some design elements. Our remaining item of work is to complete improvements to Via Montserrat and replace an old 54-inch culvert with a twin 48-inch culverts, which will pass a 100-year storm event. We've also redesigned the project to eliminate all permanent impacts to jurisdictional waters. So it will alleviate flood concerns in the area. As to schedule, we're currently working through final plan check comments with DPLU staff, and concurrently we've initiated contact with the resource agencies to get their concurrence on the design. And I'll be here for any questions if need be. Thank you.
Use the name Audra. So number 10, I think that's nice, but I also think that you guys should have preserved the 2020 election records to prove that everything was legit. That would have been nice. That's your job. The fact that you need to accept donations for your department that you created in order for like staff to get training and stuff is a little bit, I would hope that you could fund that instead of, making people donate so that you can. The extension of this completion dates, it's already been going on for like almost 20 years, these projects, and there's only 34 single homes and 148 condos to be built. They're halfway done. Concerned that 2 years isn't going to give them enough time to actually complete that. Seems a little bit weird. But everything is. The healthcare trailers, that's nice. I'm just wondering where these trailers are from. FEMA? Who knows, right? And is that something you consider for the homeless instead of like giving people 2 homes? I mean, it's a nice idea and all, but you leave other people behind. And number 4, Jim, you cannot vote on this. It has to do with Sandag. You're in bed with Sandag. It's a conflict of interest. So if you vote on this, you're not supposed to vote on it. You're not engaging. You don't have a 700 form that has Sandag on it. You're getting money from Sandag then. Why do you have a 700 form that has that on there, Jim? It's an old one. Because you shouldn't be doing that. But regardless, this is your guys' idea to get everybody, whatever, Nathan, you think it's funny, but it's not. But to get everybody in densely populated areas, instead of building around this, you should build transit where people live, instead of trying to build around a transit station, thinking people are going to come.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we will hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'd like to remind the callers again that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we'll begin with our first caller.
Hennigan. On the Buena Creek thing, the description says it will play an essential role in our efforts to align future housing with access to public transportation options. This is an attempt to impose urban centers and transit hubs. Whatever happened to free choice? Live where you want, not packed in like a caged animal. If there is a wildfire, would you rather be burnt to a crisp because the board got you into an urban center, into an electric car, and into using their electric transit, but the electricity is out so you can't move? Or would you rather have a chance to maybe lead to a shelter you designed? Sounds like the board would rather go the burnt to a crisp route than having transit to other urban centers like Escondido or Julian. This seems to be based on SENDAG's 2021 regional plan. The proposal calls for mobility hubs where people will be concentrated, which facilitates the spread of diseases, and you can hear your neighbors and their kids screaming and arguing for flexible boundaries. After all this planning, SENDAG can't even tell us where these basic population centers will be. And full-day public transit, which will only run for 20 hours. Reducing regulatory burdens. Certificates, if need, are there to help. Disabled people, I mean, I'm sure you've all heard the stories. There's nothing, no permanent disability. Everyone has the potential to get better. So it's not just extra paperwork.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to the next caller.
Truth. Item 2, it's nice to see something mentioned that SENDAG is seeking to eliminate as part of the regional plan, and that is single-family homes. Single-family homes. So nice I'm saying it twice. It sounds a lot better than 4+ story, multi-family, high-density, smart city mobility hubs with high concentrations of people as part of the SDS. Jim, that's the sustainable community strategy. Have you learned that yet? It's the opposite of these homes on land to breathe on. Item 3, I'd ask what difference does it make to the planning and development services if it's a 30-day trailer used for residential purposes or if it's for health purposes? It's still there for 30 days. What business is it of government? Once again, people are being asked to beg for permission just to get health care in this case. So, Jim, if you want to ease regulations, just eliminate this invasive certificate of need and end the discrimination against people who require lifelong physical care in the unincorporated areas. That's the only sensible step away from your wrong direction. Item 4, transit-oriented development, otherwise known as sustainable development, as part of the UN's Agenda 21. According to the sustainability cult, though, no homes are supposed to be built near highways. But for the second day in a row, Jim and Nora, here we have Buena Creek situated along the 78. But the cult makes exceptions when it fits their bigger picture. Maybe they'll build a bunch of sustainable slate gray prison block stack and pack housing next to that transit, or they'll just collect a check on it. Item 10, don't claim any of you supervisors are assisting property owners affected by the Border 32 fire when you're trying to control the scraps of their lives with permits. Talk about being tragedy pimp.
Thank you. Your time is up. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on the items on the consent calendar.
All right, we have a motion by Vice Chair Vargas, seconded by myself, to approve the items on consent calendar. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We'll go into our discussion items, agenda items today. We'll begin with agenda item 5, right-of-way done right, protecting the quality and safety of county right-of-way work. I appreciate Supervisor Lawson-Remer partnering with me on this item. Together, we are working to try and ensure that the workers in San Diego County have not only safe working conditions, but are treated fairly, and that their labor and energy that they expend is properly compensated and recognized. Today's policy is just the beginning step in the development of this ordinance, but we will begin the work around building the ability to have an environment where traffic control workers can earn a prevailing wage. This is a wage that the same entities pay on all publicly funded projects. It is a wage that is consistent across any government that engages these folks. But the reality is the work that they do deserves that they be paid fairly on all work in San Diego County. We believe traffic control workers perform an important and valuable job but also one that is inherently very dangerous. Each year, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration records more than 800 deaths in roadway work zones, the majority of which are vehicle occupants. It's essential that investments maximize worker safety and public safety, and the work is performed by a workforce that is well trained, paid a wage that attracts high-quality workers and helps build healthy, self-sustaining communities. As a complement to this action regarding prevailing wage, we want to do everything we can to make sure that the county works with businesses working to do business in the right of way. And so as a part of this action, we're asking the county team to identify potential mechanisms that could be deployed to significantly increase permit issuance. Many permits are now covered under an annual permit, which is cut down on time, but we hope this effort can look at other potential improvements so that we can more rapidly issue the permits for this work to begin, providing certainty to those that are doing the work while we simultaneously provide better conditions and pay for the workers that are doing this. I know there's been some concern expressed about stakeholder outreach and engagement. This is the beginning of the process. This vote is to start the process of engaging in stakeholder outreach and discussion to shape options that will come back to our board. Our vote today is not a final vote to adopt this. It is merely to begin the effort to do the stakeholder outreach, to do the development of an ordinance, and then it will come back to this board multiple times in the future. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations that are in here, and we'll give Supervisor Lawson-Remer an opportunity to make some introductory comments as well.
Thank you so much, Chair Fletcher, and happy to second your motion. I'm just want to say I'm excited about partnering with you on this work because I know that the safety of our roads is just so critical, and certainly the safety of the people who work on our roads deserves our care and attention, and we need to be vigilant in protecting the folks that are protecting us every single day. So, you know, one of the things that I think we're going to be doing here is making sure that the folks that are out there keeping our roads safe are able to afford to live here and raise their families, and also protecting their safety, because traffic control is really critical public-facing work. I do just want to take a moment to clarify. I think there's a lot in this board letter, and in the process of putting this together, you know, thinking a lot about, you know, what are the, you know, right scale of projects to be included and incorporated. And the clause that is included regarding a similar small project permit applicant is really intended to exempt really small permittees that have, you know, one-off projects like a single-family homeowner, you know, or like a small business, but you know, not defining an exemption in such a way that would then allow a whole bunch of small projects to be lumped together, but all of them get an exemption, right? Which would then undermine the intent of the ordinance. So I just wanted to clarify that for staff as you go out to do the work in collaboration with stakeholders to return with an ordinance, just to be, you know, really clear about what we're trying to do here. You know, I think much of the work that we do on right-of-way is funded, you know, by federal, state, and local government, and some of it's already performed under prevailing wage, but there's a significant portion that is not covered by labor protections, and this action today would help ensure consistency across the industry and make sure all the folks that are working on our right-of-way and you know, repairing our roads are protected in the County of San Diego. So thank you very much, and happy to second.
Thank you. Let's go to our public speakers, and then we'll come back to other board members.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 5 total requests to speak, 2 individuals in person, and 3 requesting to speak by phone. I'd also like to note for the record that we did not receive any e-comments on this item. Any members of the public that requested to speak on this item by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you, and we will begin with the in-person speakers. As your name is called, if you could please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I'd like to invite forward Audra and Kelvin. You will have 2 minutes to address the board, and if you could please begin by stating your name for the audio record.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Kelvin Barrios. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Laborers Local 89. I'm here today representing my business manager, Valentin Macedo, and our 4,000 union construction workers. I'm also joined here by a dozen of our members in the audience. This policy will provide for wage equity among all workers that are responsible for keeping construction workers and the public safe in construction zones in the public right-of-way. This will ensure keeping a high-quality workforce engaged in this important and essential duty. We have observed that companies and contractors that need to access the public right-of-way do not pay traffic control workers an adequate wage. These companies have been known to pay workers minimum wage or close to it for work that clearly merits a higher wage and skills associated with it. Even some collective bargaining agreements have low wages associated with them or not equal to prevailing wage. This market has created and encouraged a race to the bottom and exploits workers that are a majority from communities of colors and women in construction. A minimum wage that is equal to prevailing wage is a policy that we are supportive of. We do not support any exemptions to that policy aside for single-family home improvements or the like, just like stated by Supervisor Lawson-Remer. And not any new construction. So again, we're supportive of that, of the amendments that she made associated with, remodels or the like. Again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate the work that you're all doing.
Use the name Audra. The idea is nice, but I feel like you guys determine who's essential and who isn't. Like we had a nurse come in yesterday who lost her job because of you guys. And a lot of people are doing that, but you guys get to dictate if like they work for the county or like something, it's like you'll go ahead and make sure that they're taken care of. Well, should that be across the board? I mean, you're not even covering all traffic controllers, like if it's a smaller one or, a private like business or a residence, it's not, they don't get paid as much. I just find that you guys are not inclusive with things and that you leave a lot of people behind in what you decide to do. And I think that you should, across the board, help people, not just some that you find are, essential while leaving others behind to, have to pick up the pieces of their own life. I mean, you're getting $123.5 million from the state gas tax revenues that you're going to use on this in unincorporated areas. I'm pretty sure that you could, like across the board, make sure that people can afford to live here. But instead, it's like, some people are essential, some aren't. Some people can lose their jobs, have to close their business, and some don't. None of you guys are suffering. And a lot of people in the county are. A lot of people. And it's just sad because I wish you would include everybody. Because you talk about equity and equality, but at the same time, you're like slapping people in the face. And it's sad because it's like, why doesn't everybody matter? Every single person. You talk about it like everybody matters, but they don't. I would love to see that from you guys.
Thank you. And now we will hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. Again, I'd like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we will begin with our first caller.
Consuelo. Yeah, just as Audra was saying, it's so funny to hear you guys talk about equality and fairness for these workers. And yet, when it came time for them to try and keep their job, they had to choose. Well, they didn't choose it. They had no choice but to take an experimental shot in order to keep their jobs. I mean, where's the fairness and equality then? How about creating a place for people to live like human beings instead of slaves to some bullshit concept of progress that's driving us all mad? Anyway.
Thank you. We will go to the next caller.
Paul Henkin, if the worker risks and skills are similar, of course the pay and conditions should be the same. Do you mean state and federal law isn't enough? But, if you can set this policy at the county level, and you should, there is no reason that you cannot chart your own course on COVID or monkeypox or behavioral health, for example. I strongly condemn the incivility some people show at these meetings, and that includes you guys. Some psychiatrists believe that this sort of dialogue, rants against people, not ideas, serves mostly to harden positions, and then too late you take stock and realize that the agenda item should have been modified or it was a bad idea in the first place. In cases like name-calling, it causes hatred where there should not be any. And for some callers, the supervisors can do nothing but these speeches, like a name-calling rant. But the supervisor is so powerless that they cannot punch the mute button. Also, I was really ashamed the other day when that woman came in and started crying and crying and crying on the podium. Not one supervisor said anything like, I sympathize. So, please listen, but not only listen, do what's right. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Truth. That was great, Paul. Here we go again with the sustainability cult theory of evil sprawl. The item says, quote, low-density sprawl relies heavily on safe, well-maintained roads and freeways, end quote. You mean the people of the county who don't live in smart cities and drive cars and pay millions and millions in taxes and gas taxes and extra taxes actually demand maintained roads and freeways? How dare they? The item says that about $60 million will be used to maintain roads, highways, bridges, and underground utilities. But there's no way that's happening with the Sandag Regional Plan or the United Nations Agenda 21 that continues to be pushed here. And history shows us that the roads and freeways in the county continue to be left unmaintained, with easy evidence being witnessed by the horrible condition of roads along El Cajon Boulevard from North Park to City Heights. Year after year, tax after tax, nothing changes. But this item is pretending to care about the safety of traffic control workers by addressing their finances. But common sense says that increasing the minimum wage won't stop a distracted driver from hitting a worker, will it? So don't lie. The point is to just adopt a minimum wage for all traffic control workers doing work for all projects in the county right-of-way, equal to or greater than the wage set by the state, in order to please a few temporarily and impoverish all in the long term. Those increased wages will eventually result in less hours for workers and or less workers at the same hours. It's inevitable. It's like science. It can't be denied, but it can be lied about by witches in white coats like Wilma, Jim.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. Let's go to Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. A few months ago, my office was contacted by people trying to get stuff done in my district, and they were complaining that the encroachment and traffic control permits were taking 6 to 9 months to get. And so here you have a project that's green-lighted in every way, shape, and form, and because you don't have this one permit, you're paying interest on your loans, you're paying your people to be in place, and it was absolutely outrageous. And so we were working with Public Works behind the scenes. So when you added this to your board letter, I couldn't be more delighted. I just asked that we consider a friendly amendment to create, when they come back, they come up with a standard of what is an acceptable time frame, because we can't have people waiting 6 to 9 months on their projects. You know, all these employees are sitting at home waiting to go to work because we didn't issue a permit. And a permit's not a difficult permit. We're not talking about some heavy plan. We're talking about something simple and straightforward, but we didn't have the workforce. COVID and the rest pushed us back. And I'd also like to have, with that standard, a performance matrix, so that if it does fall 4 to 6 weeks behind, we don't just sit there and let it go to 6 or 9 months, that we step up, have some fail-safes to backfill the workers necessary to get these things, get rid of the bottleneck and move forward. So would you consider taking a friendly amendment to add a standard of practice with a performance matrix?
Yeah, I think what we can do is just in recommendation 2, direct the CAO to assess potential improvements, expedite right-of-way permit issuance, including acceptable standards and performance evaluations, and return to the Board of Supervisors with 120 days. I'd be happy to do that. May I ask the seconder?
I absolutely agree. And yes, I've heard these same concerns about huge delays, and we definitely don't want those. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the opportunity here. And I do like the second recommendation to approve the right-of-way, expedite the right-of-way permit issuance, and I appreciate Supervisor Anderson's friendly amendment onto that as well. I'm usually very reluctant to drive up any cost of housing or construction, but my understanding this is just a first step in asking staff to come back with a potential ordinance for us to consider. We did receive a letter, it was yesterday, from the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce where they were concerned about the lack of outreach. And they actually reached out to some of their stakeholders and they hadn't heard anything about this particular item. So when it comes back, I'd like, if we could work with the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce, ask staff to consider their input and maybe do more outreach with some of the concerned, particularly private sector businesses, and get their input. I would appreciate that.
Absolutely. Okay. Vice Chair Vargas.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to say thank you to my colleagues for bringing this forward. I think it's really important work that ensures that construction zones are managed safely and ensures safety for utility workers and ensures traffic flow and incident management for drivers in communities where the work is happening. So I think it's very important that our workers receive fair compensation. I'm looking forward to staff returning with recommendations to uplift traffic control work and safety as well. So happy to support this item.
Thank you, Vice Chair. We have a motion by myself, seconded by Supervisor Lawson-Remer, to approve the recommendations 1 and 2, amended item 2, with Supervisor Anderson's suggestion in item 5. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We're going to go to agenda item number 6, regional water infrastructure addressing the drought, an item brought forward by Vice Chair Nora Vargas. We'll go first to Vice Chair Vargas for any introductory comments you'd like to make.
Thank you, Chair. As everyone knows, our state of California is going to continue to see the drought and climate change intensify through our lifetime. Our extreme weather conditions become more frequent due to climate change, and it is critical that the county prioritizes drought management and water infrastructure sustainability. Our frontline communities, low-income communities, and communities of color are disproportionately impacted by environmental injustices, making them the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Longer drought conditions create direct consequences for low-income communities and communities of color. Income inequalities combined with limited water source threatens access to affordable water. Unaffordable water sources impact economic opportunities, access to quality water and food access, regional efforts, advance equity, address environmental and climate justice, and leads to community adaptation and resilience. Our region's resilience on water sources will pose an increased challenge. The main point of this board letter is really to continue the advancement of drought management and water sustainability actions that will require regional and binational collaboration to ensure that our residents, agricultural communities, and the economy continue to develop best practices. As we know, communities of color and low-income people living in tribal, rural, and agricultural communities endure the limited and costly access to safe and affordable water, and it is those communities that have been carrying a disproportionate share of the drought burden. Board letter includes actions for the board to support and update regional assessment and provide a timeline for proposed drought management and water infrastructure, sustainability actions to identify county stormwater capture, and reclamation opportunities and policies. These actions will enhance and support countywide programs that focus on stormwater capture incentives and enhance an educational campaign focused on water conservation programs. I really brought this letter forward because I believe the County of San Diego has a role to play as the regional conveners. It is important to be collaborative with our binational community and nearby cities. And based on discussion with stakeholders, I want to make a couple of changes to the board letter. The first one is I want to add the word state in the last paragraph of the overview and background and the last sentence of the first paragraph, where it says drought crisis to read state drought crisis, just to clarify that. And also in the first paragraph in the background, I would like to change 80% to 2/3. I was getting various number sources and I want to keep the 2/3 as part of that. And then also, I would like to add water conserved in Imperial County after the Colorado River. And I think I've shared these with our clerk as well. With that, I urge my colleagues to support the recommendation taken on this board letter, and I move to support this item.
Thank you. Happy to second that, noted with the amendments that were outlined. Let me ask the clerk to call forward any public speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 5 total requests to speak on this item, 2 individuals in person and 3 requesting to speak by phone. I'd also like to note for the record, we did not receive any e-comments on this item. For any members of the public that have requested to speak on this item by phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers. As your name is called, if you could please come forward to the podium. Audra and Karina Contreras, and you'll have 2 minutes to address the board. And if you could please begin by stating your name for the audio record.
Hello, my name is Karina Contreras, and again, I'm speaking in my capacity as council member in the city of Vista. And I want to say that this is an incredible opportunity to move forward with some more resilience for our county. Just in my little city, which is 19 square miles, about half of our ARPA funds are going into stormwater infrastructure. There's a severe need, not only in my city, but throughout the region, to really address our water crisis. One of which is not having enough water, and then the events when there is water, having too much of it all at once. And right now, the way that we're building our infrastructure continues to be this outdated way, where we're just trying to capture as much stormwater and have it go right out to the ocean without being treated. Instead, we could really design such a better system that allows our groundwater to recharge, allows us to have access to affordable and clean, safe water for our community, not just now, but in perpetuity. So I really, really hope that this is a unanimous yes, and I look forward to seeing what comes back. Thank you so much.
Use the name Audra. Drought, come on. I mean, for real. There's water in the earth, we know that. In San Marcos, there's an actually drilled well that's able to be used, but they capped it off, which was smart. But to collect rainwater, are we in Seattle and I'm just confused? It doesn't rain here enough. You want to give people barrels to collect rainwater and give them incentives to build storm water capture and reclaim things. Yeah, but then you're saying that the drought, what causes the drought is high temperatures and limited rainfall. So I'm confused. If there's limited rainfall, why would you spend a bunch of money to capture water? You could do it in the air. You could do it that way, but, and this is costing $900,000 to evaluate. I just, I don't know, and like, it's crazy that climate change is so racist. I mean, because it only affects some people, not everybody. I mean, I don't know why people of color are more affected, or frontliners, whatever that means. Is that workers, frontline workers are more affected by it? And also low income. So does it not affect you guys? Are you not affected by climate change? I don't know, you're Superman, Nathan. I don't know, but just this is bogus because you're there is no drought, you guys. I just wish you would get the water from the earth. Go check out San Marcos, Jim. If I give you that information, will you do that? Depends. If I pay you to do it, I'll let you look at it. I will give it.
Thank you. Now we will hear from those that requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. Again, I would like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. And we will begin with our first caller.
Truth. Speaking earlier of the sustainability cult, here we have drought everywhere, except for a few days ago when it totally rained. I still have water collected from that day. Do you supervisors need some? It's cheaper than this $900,000 agenda item. This item talks about binational collaboration, exactly like Sandag having Mexico, Imperial County, and the U.S. Department of Defense being on the board and having a say on what happens in San Diego County. And when one reads Section 1A, sure enough, there's Imperial County and binational cities, which is a nice way to say collaboration con Mexico, isn't it, Nora? And the item mentions water sustainability, which we know means agendas like the county sustainability vision and goals, which reads, quote, reducing the demand for potable water, increase availability of alternative water sources, including treated wastewater for drinking, end quote. Or the information from the August 30th meeting that said, quote, the wastewater collected from East County residents and businesses by 2025 is expected to provide 30% of the local drinking water demand. Messaging is being used to socialize the concept of capture and reuse to the public. The purpose of this is to get the public to start thinking of stormwater as a useful resource. Additional action will be taken to support the city of San Diego and further promoting the goal of 35% reclaimed potable use water by 2035, end quote. Messaging is a nice word for propaganda. Sorry, but I can't swallow the literal crap water you supervisors are trying to sell.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Oh, and Nora, I'm sorry it's a bit too late to change the board letter. Everyone has read it already. Part of the stormwater problem is that availability and storage are limited, and you should consider other sources, like the desalination plant. The ocean is an abundant and available source. This would be a golden opportunity to research sea turbines. I sent you an article about that, and tidal flows to increase power to desalination plants. I do not know why you want to pay for a separate stormwater report. By the time it's done, we'll probably be so thirsty that we'll be happy to drink seawater. Our reports with partial solutions. I also want to say Audrey's here almost every week. I mean, she's inspiring. A lot of her statements are spot on. You should be recognizing her, and Consuelo. I mean, it's almost the same thing. A lot of her statements are inspiring, and a lot of it is spot on. So please start interacting with these people. Oh, and sorry, and Mike Borello, I got to mention, a lot of his are spot on. And he does a heck of a lot of research, probably more than any of us. So please start interacting with these people. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Consuelo. I just wanted to make a comment thank you, Paul. That was really nice. There's a lot of people out there that, go and recognize, and that's, yep, spot on. These people need to, start communicating with us, and, that's just sad that they don't. But anyways, okay, I wanted to point out that a lot of people don't realize that, they keep us in fear, and, regarding the water, there's no scarcity of water. There's no lack of water. Check out Deborah Tavares' videos on YouTube. She speaks about this. She spoke about this years ago, and we're living it today. So start paying attention, people. There's a lot to learn out there. Don't be in fear. Just armor yourself with that knowledge and stand up for what's right. And especially you supervisors, you need to start like, it's just kind of obvious. It's not even like, okay, they probably don't get it. No, you guys get it. You guys totally get it. And you know what we say is in fact truth. So it's, in the end, you're going to look like the clowns that you are acting like. And that's, you still have time for redemption, and it is that time. Anyways, all right. Bye.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
All right, thank you. We'll go to Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to thank you, Supervisor Nora Vargas, for your team for bringing this item forward. I think it's a great idea overall. And I agree there's more things the county can do to strengthen the resiliency and adaptability to the drought and extreme weather, and we should be doing this. I would like to ask for a friendly amendment. I'm always cognizant of farming and farmers, and water is a huge, huge issue for them. So I was just wondering if you would add maybe to your a list of recommendations here, A through H, maybe add I, to say identify risks, opportunities, and incentives for sustainable agriculture projects. So, thank you.
All right. So we have add a recommendation I, identify risks, opportunities, and strategies for sustainable agriculture projects. With that, we have a motion by Vice Chair Vargas, seconded by myself. Please vote.
That was actually opportunities and incentives.
Opportunities and incentives. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
Go to item 7, administrative item, second consideration and adoption of ordinance around organic materials. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Desmond. We'll ask the clerk to call forward the speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have four total requests to speak, 1 individual in person and 3 requesting to speak by phone. I'd also like to note for the record, we did receive 1 e-comment on this item, and that was in favor. Any members of the public that have requested to speak on this item by phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speaker. I'd like to invite forward Audra. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and if you could please begin by stating your name for the audio record.
I use the name Audra, so, you guys, organic materials cause carbon dioxide and methane to be released, whether they're in a landfill or in a compost pile. So, you guys are so weird. But you want to get down to zero waste, which evidently now zero waste is 90%. It's not 100%, because you guys know that you can't meet that. But I love how you want to meet a certain goal and then you can't meet it, so you have to keep extending it. Like 2035, 2045, just keep pushing it out, because it's totally impossible to do. I do like that you're reducing the permit cost and the time to do it, but the fact that people are getting permits to do things we don't need to ask the government for. Can I sell compost? What? Super weird. We need less control from you guys. We need to be able to live our own lives and not have to get a permit for everything. But basically you're saying that there is 1,079,808 tons of organic waste that you can't get rid of, or that's left over. How about, why not try and feed people with the food why does it have to go in the trash? Are people just throwing their produce away? People are asked to get rid of their crops, so is that part of it? I don't know, but I don't know how you think sequestering it in the soil isn't it recycling. Carbon gets recycled and turns into oxygen through plants. So, is it really sequestering it? Just the terms you guys use are a little...
Thank you. Now we will hear from those that requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. Again, I would like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. And we will begin with our first caller.
Consuelo. So regarding this item, I don't have a lot to say, but can I suggest that you do like the city council does, and we can forfeit our time to other people to give them more time to speak on a subject? Just a thought. Anyways.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
I'm Jessica Toth, and as the Executive Director of Solana Center for Environmental Innovation, I encourage you to vote in favor of the Organic Materials Ordinance update. The Organic Materials Ordinance is an excellent step forward. To make it effective, the county will need to do outreach to raise awareness about the ordinance and provide proper training and education about composting. Solana Center is eager to partner with the county on this effort, as we currently provide composting training for farms and community gardens. I invite you to visit our facility to see firsthand our mid-scale composting operation, which is the size and the scale targeted by this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Paul Henkin. Again, do you recycle your organics? I know my kids would have trouble identifying the materials or bin to put them in. You will probably have real problems enforcing this. Maybe you should also employ the unemployed on picking out the stuff on conveyor belts instead. To be blunt, the homeless seem better at going through my trash than the trashmen. Also, polite clapping at the board between speakers. Check your Senate Bill 1100, codified as Government Code 54957A, part of 54957.95A, sorry, part of the Brown Act. But it does permit polite clapping as long as it doesn't interfere with the orderly process of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Truth. It smells like another green gas item on the agenda. Or maybe it's all the extra composting that's being promoted here. This item mentions decarbonization of the electrical grid, buildings, transportation, natural climate solutions, food systems, and the circular economy. The circular economy is straight from the World Economic Forum. Anyone can go on YouTube and watch A Future Without Waste, featuring their crazy agenda contributor, Ida Aachen, talk about the circular economy. She wants us all to rent everything and own nothing. World Economic Forum member Nathan, I will let you have my scissors to cut those strings on your shoulders anytime you want to. You won't have to do the decarb dance. It just looks twitchy anyways. The natural climate solutions include, from the November 17th, 2021 meeting, quote, leaving natural land cover intact except for renewable energy infrastructure, solar panels, wind turbines, and transmission machinery, end quote. That toxic lithium-based infrastructure is flammable and unsustainable. Wind turbines are killing thousands of birds and bats. They're emitting low-frequency and electromagnetic emissions, and they can combust into flames. For this toxic regional decarbonization framework, using the excuse of a lawsuit from the states, if we don't push a zero carbon emission future, nobody's buying that. About the waste diversion goal of 80% by 2030, if only there was a way to permanently divert these waste agenda items. But they can't be recycled because they're just plain toxic garbage.
And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
We have a motion by myself, seconded by Supervisor Desmond. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We're going to go to agenda item number 8, Traffic Advisory Committee. I want to thank staff for bringing forward the Traffic Advisory Committee recommendations included in this board letter. Our recommendations for new stop signs in Spring Valley at Lamar Street and Helix Street, intersection of Lamar Street and Vista Drive. Additionally, we are approving the local road safety plan. The vision is to achieve 0 deaths and severe injuries on county roadways by promoting safe, healthy, and equity mobility for all. This plan will help ensure that future roadway projects are focused on location and communities most in need of safety improvement. The change to a data-driven approach can help objectively guide our resources to the neighborhoods that are most in need. I hear from constituents a lot about their concerns for safety on our roads, including pedestrians and cyclists. Very supportive of the effort to ensure that we realign how we tackle these issues moving forward. And I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations in item 8. We have a second by Vice Chair Vargas. Let me ask the clerk to call forward any public speakers in this item.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 3 total requests to speak, 1 individual in person and 2 requesting to speak by phone. Again, I'd like to note for the record, we did not receive any e-comments on this item. For any members of the public that requested to speak on this item by phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speaker, and I'd like to invite forward Audra. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
Use the name Audra. Nathan, you want to reduce deaths? That is wonderful to hear. We should start doing that instead of just talking about it. No? How about with the vaccines? That would be weird, right? Because you'd actually save somebody's life. So you want to reduce speeds by 5 miles an hour, and that's going to save lives. Good to know. That's good to know. But it seems more of like your road diets and stuff, and and then you're going to want to have radar enforcement, so are you going to give people tickets? That'll bring in money for the county. Good. Good. But you want to reduce deaths. Are you being serious about that? Would you actually do everything in your power to reduce them? No? Are you just twitching, or are you saying, I don't know? Because actually, if you cared about reducing deaths, you wouldn't put traffic deaths over genocide deaths. These vaccines are killing people. You could just acknowledge that instead of saying, we need to reduce deaths. Reduce death. Reduce death while I'm causing it. I don't know, then you wouldn't have abortions either. But that's just a clump of cells. So who cares about the people dying from taking a, experimental injection? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Thank you. Now we will hear from those that requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. Again, I'd like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we will begin with our first caller.
Another junk item where the only positive sounding thing is Chocolate Summit Drive. I'd like to visit a chocolate summit one day, but let me get serious. From March to August, there were at least 8 areas where speed limits were reduced. The lowering of speed limits is to implement the U.S. Department of Transportation's Anti-Car Complete Streets Plan, whose policies include controlling and reducing vehicular speed and reconfiguring streets for active transportation. That's walking, biking, and scootering. This item will also implement a local roadway safety plan for securing future grant funds. Funds from who? Why, the federal government via a state strategic highway safety plan. Some of that so-called free money, right, Joel? The local roadway safety plan says it's, quote, working towards providing transportation to all, end quote. How about giving up that GHG-emitting, gas-guzzling SUV, Nathan? I'll take it if that's really the goal. And I was dead on yesterday with my research about Joel's choice of Justin Schlafly for the Traffic Advisory Committee, who's been deploying technology for smart cities, connected vehicles, intelligent transportation systems, and more stuff that Nathan's friends at the World Economic Forum and Jim would approve of. Because the county's new local roadway safety plan also says, quote, develop an intelligent transportation system integrated into the roadway network to communicate to drivers or automated connected vehicles, end quote. Jim, do you remember what I said to you on August 31st? Ineffective, computer-controlled dystopia. No, thank you.
Thank you, and we'll go to our next caller.
Consuelo, say it, troops, say it. Okay, so yeah, they're doing this, things like this, reducing speed, you know, because they're trying to detour the people from wanting to drive. That way, their public transit system, the same system that hardly anyone uses, will in fact be used. Yep, more control. They just want control, control, control. Yes, it is a new world order. And you will own nothing, and you will be happy because they tell you to be happy. And yep, that's government. So you just got to pay close attention, people, because they're doing these little things, and all of a sudden they move centimeter by centimeter, and you know, even nanocentimeter. And it's like all of a sudden we're at this place where it's like, how the fuck did we get here? Well, we got here because you weren't paying attention from the beginning. And so, yeah, anyways.
Thank you.
The second row, your clapping is violating the rules of procedure. It's your second warning. One more and you'll be removed from the meeting. Continue.
Thank you, and Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
We have a motion by myself, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We're going to go to agenda item number 9, receiving the San Diego River Park funding feasibility analysis project status review and options assessment, and options for board to consider. We'll let staff get set, and then I'll turn it over to them for their presentation.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. My name is James Inglis. I'm the budget manager for Parks and Recreation, and I'm joined today by colleagues from Park and Rec as well as the Office of Financial Planning. And co-presenting with me today is Mark Buckley with Eco Northwest from our consultant team. Eco Northwest is an independent economics and finance consultant firm and has several decades of experience supporting public clients to evaluate options and trade-offs for public investments, including infrastructure and natural resources. Eco Northwest has worked with the County of San Diego in the past, and today we'll be presenting item 9, the results of the San Diego River Park funding feasibility analysis. In November 2021, your board directed staff to evaluate funding options that would allow the county and its partners to complete the San Diego River Park Trail and return with a recommended option. The vision of the San Diego River Park is one that helps connect the county from east to west and west to east, allowing residents and visitors to traverse its reaches in the East County near the Julian headwaters and spanning west to Ocean Beach. It would restore habitats such as woodland, chaparral, and scrub, and provide access via contiguous trail through the desert, valley, and mountainous terrain through which the river runs. The trail would offer recreational opportunities and access to park facilities for mountain bikers, equestrians, and the hiking population alike. It would serve to restore and preserve the habitats along the river, establishing interconnected greenways that would support local wildlife. Implementing the San Diego River Park is aligned with the county sustainability initiatives, such as the county's Climate Action Plan and Regional Decarbonization Framework, by increasing trail connectivity and conservation of the preserved lands. The main trail along the river is called the San Diego River Park Trail and has been in planning for over 20 years. It has been studied and evaluated by multiple agencies collaborating to bring the vision to fruition. This includes planning documents from the San Diego River Park Foundation, the county's own Trail Master Plan, the City of San Diego River Park Master Plan, and most recently, the San Diego River Conservancy's Recreational Trail Plan. These documents were the foundational framework that formed the analysis to determine a funding mechanism that could be used to complete the vision as directed. These prior planning efforts included stakeholder engagement, but as part of this analysis, the county team has led specific outreach and engagement for the funding feasibility. Beginning in early 2021 with the task force meeting and continuing through to this hearing, we have held multiple stakeholder meetings with local and state agencies, nonprofits, regional and tribal governments, businesses, and other members of the community. The outreach was guided by two objectives. One, to collect data from these and plans from these stakeholder organizations and agencies to inform the analysis, and also to inform all interested parties about the analysis and provide opportunities for feedback. Outreach included a presentation to community planning groups, 2 virtual public meetings in March and May, as well as a survey. It included multiple social media promotions about the analysis and how to be involved, a project website, flyer distribution, and from this, hundreds of interested members of the public signed up to receive notice about the analysis. There were opportunities for the public to give input throughout the entirety of the process, and the feedback we received was positive, and there was high interest in completing the San Diego River Park Trail, and the outreach helped us gain insight on what data was available to help the funding analysis. The river itself flows from Julian through Alpine, Lakeside, Santee, and ends in the city of San Diego at Ocean Beach. You can see the blue line on the map that depicts how the river moves through these multiple jurisdictions, and when complete, it will be approximately 130 miles of trail along the river. Roughly 50 of the 130 miles have been built, as depicted by the green segment shown here. And the yellow lines represent the planned trail segments. In total for the full corridor represent approximately 80 miles. 5 of those miles are underway or will be soon through private development, leaving 75 miles as the figure we use for this study for what needs to be funded. 34% of those needed trails lie within city jurisdictions such as Santee and the city of San Diego, and partnering with them to complete the project will be crucial. And the trail will vary along its route. It will range from soft surface natural trails to fully paved lanes. There will be need for bridges and road crossings in certain areas for safety and to allow access over portions of the river. And the variability in this trail type was a significant factor in considering how much the 75 miles of remaining trail would cost. In total, to complete the San Diego River Park Trail, it is estimated to range from $271 to $668 million. The figures here show that the bulk of the cost comes from the potential need for land acquisition or easements on private land. There will also be variability in the development and construction costs and a need to support ongoing operations and maintenance once the trail is built. I will now turn it over to Mark to present some of the funding options.
Thank you, James. After reviewing a wide range of funding mechanisms, our analysis brought us to 7 options for the board to consider to fund the project. While there are many similarities across the options, they can be grouped generally into the following categories. 3 options involve pursuing a new tax or fee. 1 option considers pursuing an enhanced infrastructure financing district. 2 options include financing with new revenue through general obligation bonds or existing revenue under certificates of participation. And finally, the board could look to fund the project directly with the general fund. The board could choose 1 or more of these options. All of these efforts can benefit from coordination with partner jurisdictions, particularly the City of San Diego. The option to create new districts particularly benefit from partnering, considering the cross-jurisdictional nature of the San Diego River Park. We evaluated each option based on several dimensions, but the key considerations were, first, we asked, can the mechanism generate enough revenue to fund the project or make a sizable contribution? We then looked at more discretionary variables such as, does its purpose fit the objectives of the project? Does it require voter approval? Can you use this mechanism to finance the project and fund the bulk of the cost up front, paying back over time? Or would it be a pay-as-you-go model where you wait for money to accumulate before proceeding and make investments when revenue allows? And can it fund ongoing operations and maintenance of the trail? We also considered the time it would take to implement and the cost of implementation as part of our analysis. Implementation timeframe in our analysis estimates the time from the start of creation of the mechanism to revenue availability for projects. I will now go through each option and highlight some of the key strengths and drawbacks. In option A, the board could decide to pursue a new tax or fee that would support the cost of the project. There are pros and cons to each of these. Option A1 involves a new maintenance district, such as a community facility district or a maintenance assessment district. Maintenance districts are formed when property owners within a geographic area agree to impose a tax or fee and potentially pay for public financing to fund infrastructure improvements or services such as streets, water, sewage and drainage, schools, parks, and police protection within the boundaries of that geographic area. A maintenance district would require voter approval, but would not be a countywide vote. Instead, it would be focused on a localized set of property owners that are within the district's defined boundaries. The approval threshold varies across options from 2/3 to 50% plus one. Some options in this category could also potentially address early capital funding needs. This option would cost approximately $525,000 to implement, not including election costs, over a 2 to 4 year time frame before funding for projects could be available. The revenue potential would be sufficient to address O&M requirements and potentially more. If taken alone, these funding mechanisms would take many years to accumulate enough funding to allow for projects to be completed, even if the board later chose to bond against this revenue. These districts could be managed by a JPA to help define the role and implementation of ongoing operations and maintenance among the jurisdictions. In option A2, a new sales tax could be introduced. If selected, staff would evaluate the appropriate level of the tax for this project and return to the board with a proposal. The initial implementation of this is estimated to cost approximately $1 million, not including election costs, and take 3 to 5 years before funding would be available for projects. It's estimated the new sales tax could produce up to $300 million annually with a half-cent increase to the existing tax. This option has the benefit of being able to fund O&M costs and would generate revenue quickly, but would require a 2/3 countywide vote to approve. This option would incur voter election costs that are not included in this cost estimate. Under option A3, an increased transient occupancy tax could be pursued. This option would increase the tax on overnight lodging guests. It would not be a direct tax on residents. The initial implementation of this is estimated to cost around $1 million, not including election costs, over 3 to 5 years before funding would be available for projects. Most recently, for example, the county collected $5.5 million in TOT based on an 8% tax rate. Similar to a new sales tax, this option has the benefit of being able to fund O&M costs and would generate revenue at a quick rate, but would require a 2/3 countywide vote to approve. Option B would allow staff to pursue an enhanced infrastructure financing district to support the completion of the project. This is a relatively new funding mechanism that allows the county to set aside future tax revenue for a dedicated purpose. An EIFD does not involve any new tax, but rather creates a plan for focusing new tax revenue from a district in the immediate vicinity of the project to pay for investments that will directly provide benefits to the district properties. The chart shows how the incremental growth in tax revenue increases over time as property value increases, with the base revenue continuing to go to the general fund. This growth over time is also a key reason that financing in terms of borrowing against the revenue is important. EIFDs allow bonding. Not all components of the property tax for parcels would be directed to the EIFD. For example, school districts are ineligible. Establishing the formal partnership with the City of San Diego is a critical first step for the EIFD. Partnering is important to capture this incremental tax growth value over time, particularly the City of San Diego in terms of tax revenue and the areas where additional funding to complete the San Diego River Park is most needed. The EIFD would require the formation of a public financing authority to oversee the EIFD. The PFA would be a combination of the participating jurisdiction election body representatives as well as community members. The formation of the district would also require an infrastructure financing plan to formalize the EIFD details, including boundaries, objectives, and eligible investments. Ultimately, the size of the district would be determined by investment needs and beneficiary geography and brought back to the board for approval. An EIFD would cost approximately $1 million to implement over 2.5 to 5 years before funding would be available for projects. We estimated approximately $380 to $750 million in revenue over a 30-year time frame, with the lower value based on the county alone and the upper value including the City of San Diego as well. This option does not require voter approval and is therefore one of the options that provides the greatest amount of certainty to the outcome of the process. While an EIFD can fund maintenance on the projects built with EIFD funding, it cannot be used for existing trails or parks of the San Diego River Park. Furthermore, the EIFD can only be established for a maximum of 45 years, and therefore any maintenance costs that could be funded by EIFD revenue would require a new funding source after that time frame. Under option C1, certificates of participation would be used, which involves selling investors a share of future revenue from a designated lease. Under this option, investors would provide project funding, and the county would be obligated to pay base rental payments, funded as a general fund obligation to repay those investors over time. COPs could be implemented at project level, but do require identification of revenue to service the debt. This option would cost approximately $325,000, and implementation would take approximately 1 to 2 years before funding would be available for projects. This option does not require voter approval and would not require a delay to allow tax increment revenue growth before bonds could be issued. A COP's issuance could be combined with an EIFD to provide immediate funding while the EIFD tax increment grows and to fill any fund gaps before bonding against the EIFD is possible. Under option C2, the county would involve pursuit of a general obligation bond backed by the credit and taxing power of the county, which, if approved by voters, would allow the county to collect higher property taxes to generate revenue to support the payment of debt incurred in the form of general obligation bonds. The initial implementation of this is estimated to cost around $325,000, not including election costs, and would take 2 to 4 years to implement before funding would be available for projects. Similar to a new sales tax, this option has the benefit of being able to fund O&M costs and would generate revenue at a quicker rate than a CFD or maintenance district, for example, but would require a countywide vote to approve. Under option D, the board would not need to make any changes or create any new districts. The board would direct staff to include SDRP projects each year when allocating the general fund, including the capital improvement needs assessment and the operational plan. This option wouldn't have any new implementation costs and could be implemented in the next year. This option does not require voter approval, and the board could take action on it in the next capital funding cycle. However, there is no obligation to fund these projects in the future under this option, and therefore there is no level of certainty that the entirety of the SDRP would be completed, as these projects would compete for available funding each year. This option could take decades to see the completion of the SDRP, depending on the amount of funding committed each year. Furthermore, this does not leverage partnerships in the region to generate large revenue streams to help accomplish the vision of the San Diego River Park. Now I'll turn it back to James.
This table provides a high-level summary of the options just described. It highlights some of the key distinctions, particularly in terms of if it would require voter approval, if financing the project is an option, and the associated implementation costs. It's important to note that the options that require voter approval could incur election costs that would range from $2 to $20 million depending on the type of election, and the next opportunity to get on a ballot for a regularly scheduled election would not be until 2024. After the studies and the evaluation of the options across all criteria, staff has 2 recommendations. First, we recommend that the county pursue an EIFD. An EIFD has the potential to generate enough revenue to cover the cost of the project and has certainty in its outcome, as it does not require the voter approval to establish the EIFD or bond against the revenue that it generates. This would allow the county to move quickly to set up the district and begin the work. And while the EIFD would be able to fund new projects and maintain the projects it funds, it would be limited to a 45-year time span and would not be able to fund operations and maintenance of existing trails. Ongoing O&M to support the new infrastructure that would be built as part of this project is estimated to cost between $500,000 and $1.3 million. This would be in addition to the amount of funding already committed and supporting existing trail system. Therefore, staff's second recommendation is that a separate special district or maintenance zone be established that would support the ongoing operations and maintenance in perpetuity. If approved, staff would work initially to get a resolution of intent from any jurisdictions wishing to participate in the completion of San Diego River Park, such as the City of San Diego. It's important to note that the next steps of this project are currently unfunded, but if the board supports staff recommendations and directs staff to pursue the EIFD, staff would initiate procurement for a consultant who specializes in EIFD formation. Once under contract, the consultant would assist in the formation of the Public Financing Authority that would then be responsible for developing the infrastructure financing plan and determining the district boundaries. The process to develop the PFA and form the EIFD would take approximately 18 months from the time a funding source is identified. This process would include coordination with participating jurisdictions and outreach to the public as the process moves along. After the boundaries are defined and the IFP is ready for approval, staff would return to the board to approve the formation of the IFD, and any partnering jurisdictions would also adopt a resolution of intent to form. Once established, the IFD would take approximately 1 to 3 years before it generates revenue to start the process of issuing bonds. And while these bonds do not require voter approval, it could still take another additional year before that funding is available. While developing the IFD, staff would work concurrently to develop a maintenance district such as a CFD to support ongoing operations maintenance costs and also bring that back to the board for consideration. This concludes our presentation, and staff are available for questions.
Yeah, I want to thank you all for the presentation work. I know we've been working on this for a while, well over a year, to get us to the point here today, and we still have quite a ways to go. But I think as a board, we have a decision to make today to get us on a path to do something really significant and impactful. This is one of those things that 50, 70, 100 years from now, folks will look back and say, these group of folks got it right. They made a decision to make an investment in something that really benefits our entire region. You know, the vision of the San Diego River Park really is something that connects all of San Diego. It starts in the ocean, in Ocean Beach. It goes through San Diego. It goes up into the mountains. You're talking about 130 miles of interconnected trails that folks can enjoy in parts or in full. A way to truly create a regional recreational opportunity that once built and done right will be there for forever, and something that will benefit generations and generations of folks. You know, I want to say a special thank you to everyone who's been involved in this effort for many, many years. This has long been a goal of our region to establish this. It's always challenging when you're crossing multiple jurisdictions. It's always challenging when you go through recessions and ups and downs with what happens. But absent a real catalyst to change the trajectory, this could take another 100 years to finish. And it's not for lack of seeing the trail. It's not for lack of seeing the purpose. It really is at this point for lack of dedicated, sustained funding. The reality is it's not, county government should not build this alone. City government should not build this alone. This really ought to be a collaborative effort, and that's where I see the tremendous value of an EIFD. An EIFD only works if other jurisdictions are a part of it, in particular the largest ones that will be giving up future tax increment. And so I really appreciate Councilmember Raul Campillo and Mayor Todd Gloria for their absolute commitment to take this same action to the city. And as a county, we're not going to move forward if the city of San Diego doesn't as well, and same with them, with us. We all have to move together to ensure that the funding comes in and is sufficient to be able to do it. I don't like any of the revenue options around increasing sales tax or TOTs or any of that. I mean, we don't need to do that. We don't need to have a tax increase in order to get this done. I think it is entirely appropriate that we take the boundaries and configurations of this part and for a finite amount of time, take the increase in property tax revenue, combine it with what the city would get, work with Santee if they would like to participate as well, and dedicate those funds to the completion of this incredible regional asset. I also think there's a tremendous opportunity with the amount of state and federal funding and infrastructure dollars that are coming in where we can leverage $1 that we get from San Diego to draw down significant state funding and federal funding, which can help ensure that we can get to the place that we need to be. We've been meeting extensively, City of San Diego, the mayor and Councilmember Campillo, the River Park Foundation, the River Conservatorship, Hines, which is developing the Riverwalk project in Mission Valley, California Watershed Network, Climate Action Campaign, Backcountry Land Trust of San Diego County, Santee Historical Society, Urban Core of San Diego County, San Diego Mountain Bike Association, San Diego Fly Fisher, Circulate San Diego, DK Aniwo, chair of the Midway Planning Group, the Chaparral Lands Conservatorship, and many other groups in really extensive stakeholder outreach, along with the more than 200 individuals who joined in support of this project today. And so I think, again, it's an opportunity for us to really move forward in partnership with other agencies and create this regional coalition to drive this through. I want to, before we go to our public speakers, we'll come back to the board. I want to mention Supervisor Anderson's efforts around homelessness and say I agree with those. Building an incredible asset is only going to really be realized by the public if we can address issues of homelessness in there. And so I fully support your request to ensure that we figure out a mechanism for an MOU around homelessness in these surrounding areas where we will make these investments. And we'll be more than happy to add a recommendation to the motion to encapsulate that we do that work as we go forward. So again, I think a really important opportunity for us as a region to move forward. Appreciate the city, all the stakeholders, the opportunity in front of us with an EIFD, along with the Maintenance Assessment District, I think gives us the best long-term planning. So let's hear from our public speakers, and then we'll come back. I know my colleagues will have some thoughts as well, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 7 total requests to speak, 5 individuals in person, and 2 requesting to speak by phone. I'd also like to note for the record, we received 204 e-comments on this item. 194 were in favor, 1 was in opposition. Any members of the public that have requested to speak on this item by phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers. As your name is called, please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. I will be calling individuals in groups of 5. I'd like to invite forward Audra, Peter, Michael, Rob, and Mary. You have 2 minutes to address the board, and if you could please begin by stating your name for the record.
Use the name Audra. 100 years. 100 years. It's already been in progress for 20. I'm just wondering how what's been completed was able to be completed. What funding was used for that? And why would now all of a sudden it take 100 years to complete? Does that not seem weird? Like none of you guys are going to be around at that time to make sure it gets finished. But yeah, so just for analysis, I mean, it can cost up to $1 million. I don't understand that. And or why an average park costs $900,000 per acre to do something with. It's just a lot of money. And then you want to tax the people. I don't think that's a good idea. People are already having to leave. But I mean, hey, if you just access the general fund, you can get this going right away, right? And we don't have to wait 5, 6, however many years to get it going. I don't know, it's just a lot of money, and the fact that it can cost about as much as COVID cost us so far. Almost $1 billion to complete. Is there gonna be gold in this park? Probably, right? But you don't want the homeless there. What are you gonna do if they're there? You're gonna arrest them? What's the MOU gonna say? They're not allowed to access the park when it should be for everybody? Just like here, if there's homeless here, you guys escort them out. It's not for everybody. It's gonna cost a lot of money, and it's just pretty bogus. I don't understand why I'm the only one that thinks 100 years is a long time for this to be complete.
Thank you. Your time's up. We'll hear from the next speaker.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. My name is Pete Shear. I'm with Hines and the Riverwalk Development. We're here in support of the staff recommendation today. As you all know, the vision of the River Trail has been in place for over 20 years, and many segments of that trail are already constructed today. However, trails do not exist piecemeal, right? The system has to work as a comprehensive, connected unit. And an EIFD provides the funding to finally complete that trail and realize the vision of San Diego River Park Foundation with the San Diego River Park. Our company has studied trails in many other regions, some that I'm sure others are aware of and have been to and enjoyed. The Beltline in Atlanta, the High Line in New York City, the Sino Trail system in the DC area. All of these trails were built in areas that were previously, underdeveloped, decrepit, and full of crime. And the revitalization brought to those areas by way of the trail system, the public access, the parks, has been tremendous in all of those. This is not a new concept, and we are certain that the same benefits will be experienced here in the San Diego region with a comprehensive vision, finally completing the San Diego River Trail. So with that, I just want to say thank you all for the effort putting together this package and comprehensive report. We strongly support the staff's recommendation and encourage respectfully the board to do the same. Thank you very much.
morning, Chair Fletcher, Vice Chair Vargas, Supervisors. My name is Michael Simonson. I have the pleasure of serving Councilmember Campillo as his Chief of Staff. Councilmember really appreciates the leadership of Chair Fletcher, and as Chair Fletcher pointed out, was a participant on the task force and is a strong supporter of the staff recommendation and the creation of a EIFD. Furthermore, Councilmember Campillo has committed to bring a resolution to the San Diego City Council, a resolution of intent to show the support of the City Council for this EIFD. And it's exciting. The San Diego River is a jewel of our region, and it's an exciting moment in time to begin a funding mechanism to build out those trails. So again, appreciate everybody's support. Councilmember Campillo supports staff recommendation 100%. Thank you.
Good morning. Rob Hutzel, Executive Director. Gosh, I used to be Executive Director. CEO of the San Diego River Park Foundation. Chairman Fletcher, it is an honor to be in front of you today. Your leadership on this has been really outstanding. I want to thank all of the board members for your consideration of this item. You know, our organization started over 21 years ago, and with one simple thought, and that was to clean up and care for the San Diego River and create it accessible for everybody in San Diego and all of our visitors. This step today is just an incredible jump forward to achieving that vision that we started 20 years ago. So I want to thank everybody that's been involved with this. We strongly support the staff recommendation. We look forward to being a partner in any way that we can. You know, we started as 3 or 4 volunteers, and now we're a community of over 50,000 people. There's a lot of people, you saw in the comments. We could have gotten a lot more. We stopped at 200. We'd be happy to get a lot more if that would be beneficial. There's a lot of people that are supporting you in making this decision today. They're quiet, they're unassuming, but they'd love to see the vision of the river, our natural and cultural treasure that it is arguably the most important natural and cultural legacy, the tradition, treasure, gem we have in San Diego County. It's time we take care of it. It's time that we raise it up to its potential, the vision of something that all people benefit from. And with this act today, you move it a huge step forward. So we strongly support the staff recommendation and want to thank everybody. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mary Shepard. I'm here to support the creation of the EIFD. I'm a resident of Mission Valley. I live across the street, across Friars Road, from what will become the Riverwalk development, currently a golf course and now under construction. The way that this was explained to me in sort of my simplistic layman's terms was that the creation of that development is going to go from generating millions of property tax revenue to billions of property tax revenue. And as a resident of the valley, of Mission Valley, I would really love to capture some of that revenue and generate it for parks and improvement of the river in my front yard. So restoration and access of the river is a priority for me because as a neighboring resident, I know we are woefully short of any meaningful, safe public access to the river. And that became really apparent during the pandemic where we were asked to stay in our neighborhoods to get recreation. And in Mission Valley, there really wasn't any way to do that. So I frequently get in my car now to go to Publix Park to enjoy trails and parks. I would love to walk down the street and across the street and enjoy trails and parks along the beautiful river that's in my front yard. So I strongly encourage you to support the creation of this EIFD, to support this recommendation from staff.
Thank you. We will now hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. Again, I would like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we will begin with our first caller.
It's truth. For the record, the call-in system hung up on me last item. This item says the San Diego River Park is aligned with the county's regional decarbonization framework. Is that because no cars can drive into the San Diego River Park? Or is it not aligned with the regional decarbonization framework because it doesn't have solar panels and wind turbines lining the 130 miles of the river? I'm not sure. I mean, that's what the decarb says, that there'll be over 130,000 acres of toxic lithium-based solar panels and wind turbines, and how natural land will be left intact except for the toxic renewable energy infrastructure, and how toxic lithium will be mined and subsequently released into the atmosphere, causing ecosystem damage. These sustainability agendas never make sense, but they're always desperate to redefine reality. Last year, $500,000 was spent by these supervisors just to pay for an analysis of funding mechanisms for the San Diego River Park. It sounds like literally spending dollars to figure out how to get dollars. Now they want new taxes from either an increased sales tax, an increased transient occupancy tax, the creation of an enhanced infrastructure financing district, or debt financing options. And the very specific county number crunchers say one of these options is going to cost from $325,000 up to over $1 million. Think about that. Debt financing could cost over $1 million. And yes, Audra, 100 years is definitely a long time. It's sounding like the San Diego River Park is aligned with the decarbonization framework in the sense that they're both toxically unsustainable to the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, not seeing any other callers, that will conclude public comment on this item.
All right, thank you. Thank you all. So I'll get a motion on the table just to give us something to orient around, and then we can have discussion surrounding this. I'll make a motion that we adopt recommendations 1, 2, 3A number 1, 3B, 4, 5, 6, and then add a recommendation number 7 to have our county homeless staff work towards an MOU with relevant agencies around homelessness along the San Diego River Park area. So that would be my motion to get us started. All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's go to Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Thank you so much. I first want to say I'm just really excited to be supporting this item. I grew up in Mission Hills, so very close to the river, and I bike actually quite often from Old Town to Ocean Beach. So I'm very aware of this stretch of the river, and one thing I've been thinking a lot about as we look at how do we invest in our San Diego River for the next generation is how do we really make this river as an amenity accessible, not only to the folks in Mission Valley, which of course has to be a priority, but also, all the new development that I think we are all anticipating in the Midway region. I'm very aware that it's a big freeway. It's very hard to get to the river from one side to the freeway to the other. There's really no access from Dog Beach to Old Town. So that's one thing I just want to highlight and make sure that as we look at how the EIFD is structured, that we're really thinking about how to ensure that the folks that are within a half mile of the river are not cut off from it due to these kinds of massive freeway constructions that have too long bifurcated communities from natural amenities, and something we're all really familiar with in Logan Heights and Barrio Logan, and I think we don't want to replicate that same issues in the Midway District as sort of that becomes a new area for housing and amenities. So that's one thing I just wanted to uplift. I think this is just such an important investment. I never really understood why our elected leaders hadn't invested in the river. It's beautiful. I mean, it runs right through the heart of our community and absolutely deserves investment. And you go to other cities, you go to other places where it's just everyone is biking and running and walking and playing, along the rivers that run through the heart of those towns and cities. And I think we could do so much better here in San Diego. And I think this is absolutely a step in the right direction. I think just want to, make sure that as we do think about investing in our ecosystems and our conservation and revitalization and restoration of the natural environment, that we're making it accessible and available for communities to use, and really trying to figure out what to do about
the freeway and how to make it accessible. So thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. By the way, thank you so much for including the homeless issue. I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of that. I have a couple questions of staff. So in your presentation, you said pursue partnership with the City of San Diego, coordinate with the City of Santee. Why coordinate?
Through the chair, Supervisor, we would partner with any willing jurisdiction that wanted to participate. What we've heard from the City of Santee is that they are interested in being a part of the conversation, but they consider most of their investments in that area as complete at this time. So the larger partner for tax revenue as well as interest in completing the trail has been the city. But absolutely, if the City of Santee wants to partner on it, we are interested in having that conversation with them.
Basically, they just said they didn't want to participate in the IFD. They basically said we've already made the investment for the bulk of our jurisdiction.
I'm going to have
if you can work with them, we'd love to get them in.
I'm going to have an amendment for you in a minute that may be bringing them to the table.
Okay.
The second thing I wanted to ask staff about is Chair Fletcher made some good points about drawing down state and federal money. Have you explored any of it? And do you have any revenue sources? And are there funds available now? That's a lot of questions, but.
Supervisor, certainly we would be considering all sorts of revenue sources. We wouldn't be precluding ourselves from going for that. And leveraging the dollars that we're investing would be a priority as we're exploring this. At this time, there aren't specific grants that we are planning on, but as we put this together, we will be exploring that and looking at all of the bills coming out of the federal government, state government, and any opportunities to fund this.
One of the things I'd like to encourage you to do is, you know, the legislators that represent San Diego actually can create those grants. So instead of waiting for them to come up with the idea, perhaps we could proactively go out to them and ask them to start procuring those pots of money that we can apply for, or even designate them for us specifically with matching funds.
That sounds like a good recommendation, number 8, to add to our ledge agenda, working with our state and federal delegation to create specific funding opportunities for the San Diego River Park.
And then my last item, the San Diego River Park Foundation has said that there's close to 400 people living in the riverbed. And one of the concerns I have, of course I want to help the homeless. Of course we've been working hard on it, and the MOU goes a long way in that direction. But under right now, under the proposed mechanisms of the EIFD funds, under the umbrella, it's, quote, says, ongoing restoration, operations, and maintenance. I'd like to address homelessness and associated issues along the riverbed, but not limited to shelter solutions, outreach, and cleanup efforts. And let me explain what I'm getting at. If we have 400 people there, no one's going to walk through. No one's going to use that. We're going to go to all this effort, invest all this money, and then people are going to say, well, I'm uncomfortable doing it. At the same time, we're doing nothing to help these people, and we know that some people want to get off the streets, but some people like to live outside. And one of the solutions that the county is moving forward with is campsites. And I looked at the property of El Monte Valley, where we had purchased a whole bunch of land, which is terrific. There are folks living there now in the heart of it, where all our trails are going to go. But there are also elements of it that are on the edge of the River Conservancy that perhaps would be good locations for temporary or permanent shelters, especially when it comes to folks who refuse to go into enclosed shelter. And so I'd like for us not to be so narrowly defined that we don't have the flexibility to meet the needs of the community, so that everything that my colleague had mentioned about the beauty of using the riverbed and how important it is to connect everybody, that we don't let it squander through our fingers because we weren't thoughtful enough to anticipate the future. This doesn't say that my amendment wouldn't dedicate a specific amount. It would simply give us the flexibility to use some of this. And I think that it's in the River Conservancy's best interest to make sure those people are placed in a safe area with a better future while providing a safer environment for everybody to use the riverbed. So I'd like to add that as an amendment, just to add the flexibility for the future. And I can hand it to you, or I can read it again.
Let me ask if that's an option. Is that a allowable expenditure of the IFD funds?
Not exactly, but this is one of the important reasons why the maintenance district is an important complement, that the EIFD can be used to fund capital investments and maintenance of capital investments, and certainly those objectives could be a part of that project planning and design process, but ultimately this is one of the reasons why that complementary maintenance district is so critical.
So why don't we do this, Supervisor Anderson? What if we just add a recommendation 9? Because this is going to come back. This is
we
not the only
actually
time we're doing
found a district that did it.
Okay.
So we can help you with it.
Let's do this. Let's just add a recommendation number 9 to explore options around potential funding sources for homeless solutions in this area. And then as this comes back, we can look at what those options are. I mean, I agree, if we can find funding to help with this, then we should. And I think it'd be the betterment. I think our city, county, we all jointly share that same desire. And so that'll give you some flexibility to work on that, and then as we work through it in the future.
The one last thing, just for the record, we reached out to council, and council got back to us and said you could do it.
Okay.
So there's no legal reason why not.
Yes, let me go ahead and also add, we also have Barbara Jimenez, who's our Homeless Solutions and Equitable Communities Director with us today. And let me just say that when it comes down to homeless, as well as along the river trail here, is that we've been doing work with the homeless camp and encampments that are out there. We are partnering with a number of different groups that are out there, including the City of Santee, HART, our Behavioral Health Services, our Department of Public Works, Equus, who's one of our providers that's out there, Live Wow, PATH, River Park Foundation, East County Homeless Task Force, as well as the Hope for the homeless when it comes down to, so the work is already being done. Let me also say that as part of the governor's budget, we are looking at $150 million that the governor has allocated to this to look at respective encampments as well. So we'll be going after those respective state and federal dollars that we've talked about here today as when those grant funding becomes available. So we'll be monitoring that. I know that our Department of Parks and Rec, as well as Barbara Jimenez, will be looking at those two things. And I think the third item I should mention is that's the purpose of the consultant that we're asking for you to approve today is for them to look at the homeless portion of this as we look at how to beautify and create this EIFD.
Chairman Fletcher, I just want to be clear. Our team at the county is doing an awesome job. So if my remarks were misinterpreted in the slightest, Mr. Vu, you and your team have done an incredible job. I know you're down there at the river working with all these folks. I think that we're looking at funding sources to make sure that people are able to use this. Why narrow our thoughts? Let's be as broad and open-minded as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so let me restate the motion. So we have a motion and a second to approve recommendations 1, 2, 3A1, 3B, 4, 5, 6, adding recommendation 7 around having our county work to develop an MOU with relevant agencies around homelessness in this region, to add to our ledge agenda to seek state and federal grant funding for San Diego River Park Trail completion, and 9, to explore options around funding sources to address homelessness in this region. With that, we have a motion by myself, second by Vice Chair Vargas. Please vote.
Chair Fletcher, that motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
All right, thank you. That concludes our business on the agenda today. Let me ask the clerk if we have any remaining non-agendized public speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We do have 4 remaining requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda, all coming via phone. For those that requested to speak via phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will give those callers a moment to call in. Now we will hear from those that requested to speak by phone. Again, when it's your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. Again, I'd like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We will begin with our first caller, and again, if you could please state your name before beginning your comments.
Okay.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Ann Riddle here. It did occur to me how fast the opportunity to speak in public comment comes around as that final item is heard. And I also wondered about public comment at the beginning of the meeting. Since there were only 3 in person, couldn't we have taken 7 by phone at that time to make up the 10? I mean, it's only 20 minutes. But anyway, I came this morning as a parent advocate. I wanted to share with you a press release from a statewide group out of Colorado, a parent group called One Chance to Grow Up. They've been working with the state of Colorado around warnings for marijuana products and be distributed at pot shops, especially regarding marijuana concentrate. The state of California also has a department, the Marijuana Enforcement Division, that carries all these same warnings on their website. And together they're making a really heartfelt outreach to youth and to families regarding the dangers of marijuana concentrate. They have 4 warnings that they are asking to be distributed through the many sources that are available there at the state level, as well as through the parent community. And they are, number 1, psychotic symptoms or psychotic disorders, and in parentheses, delusions, hallucinations, or difficulty in distinguishing reality can be a problem. Number 2, beware of mental health symptoms and problems becoming greater. Number 3, be cognizant of the cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, which is uncontrolled and repetitive vomiting. And 4, do your research regarding cannabis use disorder, what that means to be dependent, including physical and psychological dependence.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to the next caller.
Good morning, Board. Kathleen. No. Good morning, Board. Kathleen Lippett here. There seems to be no end to the marijuana industry's self-interest at the state level, which elected legislators cooperatively adopt, except when the proposed legislation provides valuable public health and safety information. That is particularly true when private for-profit industries like the marijuana industry have no checks on their ability to deepen their pockets and politically influence state as well as local public electeds. Recently, that power was evidenced when aggressive industry lobbying resulted in eliminating SB 1097, the Right to Know Act. SB 1097 would have provided the most comprehensive and effective health warnings on marijuana products in the nation. It would have provided consumers with warnings about the key, well-recognized and validated health risks associated with marijuana use. It appears that for the time being, the sale and consumption of turbocharged ultra-high THC products will continue unabated. The research and evidence high-potency marijuana products linked to are the harms that should be of grave concern to not only state, but to local electeds such as yourself and your public health officials. Dr. Lynn Silver, pediatrician and director of Getting It Right from the Start at the Public Health Institute, bemoaned the public's loss of this legislation. Despite unquestionable public support and overwhelming scientific consensus, the ability to overcome the industry's interest for profits over youth and public health prevailed. This county could adopt local legislation that would require similar warnings if it truly cares about public health and safety. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. We'll go to the next caller.
Consuelo, quick comment. My husband was cut off from non-agenda, so therefore he's going to be speaking through my phone. And my quick comment was regarding how Michael Vu's going to be monitoring this. Holy shit. Hopefully it's not like the 2016 primaries you monitored. I can't even believe you're still in a public office. It's, wow, insane. Your turn, Paul.
Paul Henkin, let me just repeat that the incivility at these board meetings is shocking, and you guys need to change. You really need to change your Rule 4G to permit demonstrations, clapping, booing, whatever, between the speakers, as long as it doesn't interrupt the orderly conduct of the meeting, to bring it into alignment with state law and I don't know how many, at least 10, probably 25 major court decisions in the last few years. Thank you.
I know how Michael Vu's still serving the public because they're all recycled minions.
And Chair Fletcher, that concludes the request for non-agenda public communication this morning.
That concludes the business before the Board of Supervisors today. We stand adjourned.
The next regular meeting of the board will take place on Tuesday, September 27th at 9 a.m.